Hello everybody, I'm Raphael Perry and it's time for some more of the Cretan Chronicles. We're back in the Bloodfeud of Altheus in Book 1 and we've just reached the glorious city of Athens. You pause for a moment, then carry on, unhindered, into the city itself. You must find the way to the palace, but do not know how to. Ahead of you are grand houses built in stone, the abodes of some great lords of the city, but not large enough to be the house of your father. To either side of these, lesser houses of mud-baked brick block further progress into the city. We can carry on along this road to the left, or go to the right. The road goes both ways. Or ask someone the way to the palace. We asked for directions on our first attempt and were misled. So instead we'll just use the fighting fantasy rule. Left is best unless we have a good reason to believe otherwise. Or can go straight ahead. It was 90, wasn't it? I will double check that as it's the start of a session. Yeah, good. You've been walking along the road for a little while, and at last come upon a road leading deeper into the city. You wish you had asked the guards at the gate the way to the palace. You approach the road, but when you come closer you see that a large group of people have gathered, apparently stoning two men dressed in strange foreign garb with double-headed axe motifs sewn into their tunics. Now, the double-headed axe, shortish handle, two rather wide, very curving blades, is a heraldic emblem associated with Crete. I'm not sure how many players who would have originally played this would be aware of that fact. Most would associate the labyrinth symbol itself. The axe, the labyrinth, the axe head, and the head of a bull looking directly forwards at the viewer are the three heraldic symbols closely associated with Crete. And the men of Crete are our enemies. However, they're all the way over here, and we have no reason to hate these men directly. And this is no way for the citizens of Athens to treat foreign visitors. So, we will intervene. You approach the crowd. "Friends," you say, "is this what we expect of the folk of Athens, proud and free, but gentle too? Why do you stone these foreigners? What harm have they done to you? Do we have 13 points of shame or more? We have 5 points of shame. So we have less than 13 points of shame. Good. So we should not be ashamed to speak up. Do you have more than 14 honor points or less than 15 honor points?" And yes, more than 14 honor points is 15. Less than 15 is 14 or less. We have 28 honor points, so we're good. We've been heroic and noble throughout, so far, for the most part. For a second, the gathered crowd pauses. Seeing their indecision, you exhort them once more and save the men. Exhort them once more to save the men. "Do not defile the city by this dreadful deed," you cry. The crowd can see that you are obviously some great hero, and take heed of your words. They disperse silently. and the two men are left alone. They thank you gratefully, and say that they will now head out of Athens for some friendlier town, but there's a clue here, and we will take the clue that they were wearing the heraldic emblem of Crete quite proudly on their chests. Halt a while, friends, you say. Perhaps you can help me. I know not from where you come, but I must travel far across the wine-dark sea to distant Crete. Perhaps, if sun-smitten Naxos, sacred Delos, or gentle Cythera is your home, or some remote isle, then you can tell me of your land. The two smile as if remembering a kindlier place. We come from Crete itself, one of them says, the land of King Minos. We would gladly return there, but we must journey to Delphi and Apollo's oracle. If you find yourself in Crete, tell King Minos' daughter that you know of us. My name is Elidouros. The Cretans make one last gesture of farewell and then depart out of the gates of Athens on their long journey to Delphi. And we will make a note of that. Elidouros said to mention him to Princess Ariadne. Not to King Minos. Because there was an option in Book 2 to mention Elidouros to King Minos. And I said, we haven't seen that name at all, or something like that. Like, why would we even say this? Now we know. Section 82 in Book 1. Just making a note. That may come in useful, it may not. As you walk onwards into the city, a small boy laughs wildly at you. The sky darkens over and the air becomes hot and heavy. A few spots of rain drop and mingle with the dust on the road. Moments later, the path begins to turn to mud and people take shelter as the rain crashes down. Before you can get to cover, you are completely soaked. Away in the distance, the thunder rumbles. There is a brilliant flash and the Acropolis is bathed in blue light, and almost at once an ear-splitting clap of thunder seems almost to herald the rending of the sky. We can attempt to seek shelter nearby, or press on through the storm and try and find the palace. Well, they might not let me into the palace if I'm soggy and dripping wet. I'm not necessarily saying they'll be overly snobby, but they might make me stay outside and wait until the rain has passed. Or even, stick me in some kind of side room or antechamber to dry off first. We're already drenched, but we'll probably be able to see where we're going better if we're not walking through sheets of rain. And other people rushing about might crash into us. There may be disasters. Let's try and find some shelter. People are crowded into the nearby inn. You too join in the crush. Water and the smell of damp clothes are everywhere. You warm yourself by the fire, unable to buy anything to drink, as you have no money left. You have to be content with listening in on the various conversations. Perhaps you will hear something that will be of help to you. Apparently, she was appointed before the other one even left. But on the last race, they all crashed into each other and caught fire, and 2 of them died. Goodness, we know where that was. I imagine If our chariot had not crashed in that race, then this would be alluding to a later race that had run later on that day. Apparently, the Queen makes her own wine. They say it's gorgeous. Who was appointed before the other one even left? Medea is the new queen. We know she's taken over somehow. And we know she's not to be trusted. Somebody pushes in front of you to the fire. The rain has now stopped and slowly the inn empties. You two leave and step into the late afternoon sun. That looks suspiciously like the section we were supposed to go to if we pushed on through the storm, although it might have been 194 instead of 198. I'm not going to go looking for it. But pushing in through the storm might have just meant missing out on these hints and clues. The sun lights up the whole city with a harsh glare as it reflects off the newly formed puddles. The water drips rhythmically from the roofs, and slowly the city reawakens like 1,000 squirrels emerging from their winter's nest. Winter's rest! The road turns sharply to the right, but there is a narrower street straight on. Fighting fancy rule, straight ahead. It is a side road, which may have been a clue to stay on the main road. This is the part of the city. In this part of the city, what houses there are seem much grander. Near one of them, a dog is chained, so it cannot run freely. You approach it tentatively, not knowing how far it can move. Well, we'll continue on. Saw the clue. Didn't want to annoy the dog. Break into the house or anything. The dog growls menacingly as you pass by. Just when you think you are safely away, it rushes out, and the chain snaps as it lunges towards you. It sinks its savage teeth deep into your ankle. You kick it and manage to drive it off. It goes whimpering back to its master's house. And since we heal up before every fight, and we have the blessing of Asclepius, the god of healing, there appears to be no long-term damage. You are deep in the heart of the city now. Surely the palace must be somewhere nearby. Turning a corner, you suddenly come upon several citizens watching a group of men with whitened faces. You go nearer and see that they are silently representing some legend. Some pretend to eat. Others are drinking imaginary wine. You cannot make out what it is. Then, of a sudden, it becomes clear to you. They are depicting the death of your brother Theseus in the labyrinth. One man climbs on another's back and is the Minotaur. Another represents Theseus treading with exaggerated caution through the labyrinth, pausing from time to lean on the wall. Possibly even with a ball of wool, or string, or twine. He bends to pick something up from the ground, and the Minotaur attacks him from behind. You remember in Book 2, when we found a dead body with a sword next to it, we did not attempt to stoop and pick up the sword, and the Minotaur was upon us but did not catch us unawares. This seems to be a fitting warning regarding that, and possibly a warning about overindulging at the feasts in Crete as well. For a moment the scene freezes. Then the Minotaur separates back into two cartwheeling players, and Theseus springs up from the ground. You realize with a start that no one could know of your brother's death. You look again at the players, but all save one have vanished. His face is that of Hermes, the divine messenger. He gives you one last enigmatic smile, and is gone. Definitely a warning or clue. Bewildered, you step into a side street where you slump to the ground in utter despair of finding the palace. Nearby, you see a tall, grey-eyed, imperious woman. She waits expectantly. When you clamber to your feet, she speaks. I am Pallas Athena, and this is my city. Now go to the Acropolis, from where you may see all Athens and the place you seek. She is our patron, which is fortunate. Surely she will take pity on us in our hour of need. You may either spend 3 honor points for Athena's aid, or lose 1 honor point and go to the section we would have gone if she was not our patron. So we're losing 1 anyway. We have a choice to lose 1 or 3. Let's lose all 3 and go down to 25. Here we go. If only that was a clue. I, your patron, will transport you to the Acropolis, so that you may look over my favourite city. Remember also that you must show your mother's gem to your father Aegeus. When he asks who you are, then is the time. This reminder could be what we're paying 2 extra points of honour for. Paying just 1 point may still transport us. With this, the Divine Lady is gone, and you find yourself on the Acropolis, gazing down at the city below. Whee! All the way back towards the other end of the book. Being tossed around as if by a great storm of the will of the gods themselves. The city of Athens, laid out below you, is magnificent indeed. How much greater, you muse to yourself, must the entire earth seem to Zeus sitting on his Olympian throne. Yet Athens must be by far its fairest city, second only to the divine realm of the gods. Temples to all the gods lie below, evidence of Athens' devotion to the Olympians, but naturally the greatest of them all is that to Athena. To one side of this, on the outskirts of the city, lies the palace, the sun reflecting off the walls, damp from the rain of the storm earlier. You hurry down the hill, eager to reach your destination, and so towards the palace we go. Through the winding streets you rush, and at last come to the palace. A spacious colonnade adorns the front with columns of marble. Baskets of flowers around the door fill the air with a sweet-smelling fragrance. At the gate stands a guard forbidding entrance to all unauthorized people. He looks hot, clad in armor and carrying a short spear. You approach him and demand entrance, but he simply looks at you sidelong. "What is your name?" he sneers. Do we reply, Styricon, Altheus, or Pyraphus? I'm going to go with Pyraphus, because using our own name gets us into trouble. It seems that we are assumed to be an imposter, and quite probably the Queen has put the guards up to this. So we'll go with the false name Pyraphus for now. Saw the clue, didn't want to risk it. Couldn't think of anything particularly heroic. The guard seems to have heard of a Pyraphus. You have been lucky, but he does not let you in, instead scolding you for using the front entrance. He sends you round the back to a small entrance. From this, a smell of cooking drifts, and you can hear the sound of a feast being prepared. If we are expected, and we're being sent round to the servants' entrance, do we knock or do we just go straight in? We go straight in if we work there. If we don't work there, we knock. Let's put it another way. If we're expected to walk straight in and we knock, someone can answer the door and say, "Idiot, why didn't you just come straight in?" If we're supposed to knock and we don't and we go in, we could end up in a lot more trouble. So we shall knock. You knock once on the pine door, but nobody replies. You knock again, harder, and this time a serving maid opens the door. She looks surprised to see you and calls out to a massively built woman who wears a woolen apron. She is clearly in charge of the kitchen, and when she catches sight of you, she demands to know who you are. Do we say Altheus or Paraphus? Clearly, the Styricon option is no longer available to us, meaning we probably wouldn't have got here if we used it. Paraphus. And let's hope the name doesn't get us into great trouble. She might know the man personally. But giving her own name didn't go too well last time. Paraphus, she mumbles as if trying to remember something. Then she seems to remember. "Ah, you must be here to help at the feast," she booms. "Well, you don't look much help. Go over there and clean those mixing bowls. Haven't been used since Aegeus married Medea." With this, you are dispatched into a corner and set to work. Such labour is demeaning, but you see that this feast must be a lavish one indeed, for all day meat, bread, and wine are brought in by servants from the pastures and fields around the palace. We feel like Odysseus donning the disguise of a beggar to infiltrate his own home upon his return, and speak with Telemachus, his son, who has nothing to do with telemarketing, despite the similar sounding name. We haven't been banged up. We're not in great trouble. It's all good so far. At length, you are ordered to serve at the table. Into your hands is placed the huge brazen mixing bowl you had cleaned, now filled with wine. Into the hall you are hustled, and there, set out before you, is a splendid scene. All the guests of the king, the nobility of Athens, and even the king's retainers and servants are seated around a huge table. You set down the bowl, and from it wine is drawn for the goblets. Once a portion of the food has been set aside for Athena, protectress of the city, to be burnt later, the feast begins. You see more meat, bread, and wine consumed than you could possibly have imagined existed. There are men from Laconia, Boeotia, Thessaly, even some from Phoenicia, whence the ships ply to and fro across the ocean. It is the custom that all must partake of the feast, and at last you are noticed by the king standing away in the corner. He beckons you to him, breaks off some bread from his plate, and gives it to you. You must take 3 shame points for the humiliation of acting as a servant in your father's house. This could possibly have been avoided by giving the woman our name directly. Oh well, 8 shame it is. That's not too different. Let's see, last time we finished book 1 with 14 shame. Okay, so 8, we're part way there. And we've avoided the queen trying to poison us so far. You thank Aegeus cordially for sharing his bread with a stranger in the house, but as you do, you stumble and knock over a goblet filled with wine. It falls to the ground with a resounding clatter, and it seems that every man ceases his chattering and turns inquiringly towards you. What kind of idiot just did that? Now we've got the attention of the whole room. The king stares you straight in the face, his gaze like that of the snake-haired Gorgon, freezing you where you stand, his white locks like the snow that lies atop Olympus. "Who are you, stranger," he says, his voice strangely rich and flowing, "who come to my house thus and cause such a disturbance? Speak now, and speak the truth, for Zeus protects all strangers, and we mean you no harm." We could hesitate and wait for the king to speak further, and then he could assume anything he wants. Tell him our name is Altheus, or remember, we were told to show him the gem as well. And recently too, not just at the beginning of the book. "Do you still have your mother's gem?" "Yes, it fell in the river and I got it back," like a person who knew what he was doing and paying attention. Feeling in the pocket of your tunic, you find the gem your mother gave you when you left Trozen. You hold it out to King Aegeus, who looks at it astonished. "I am Altheus," you say, "and this is the proof." The king's regal posture relaxes and he smiles. "I welcome you, my son. Come at last and unawaited to the place of your father. The palace of your father, even." And why, it is his place. He rules it all. Aegeus's expression turns from one of joy to seriousness. "This is an opportune time that you come, for Athens is beset by an ancient peril. Each year we must send 7 young men and 7 girls to sate the appetite of the Cretan Minotaur. You, my son, must be our emissary. I shall send you to Crete with messages and a gift for King Minos, demanding that this terrible tribute be relaxed, and that he accept gold and silver rather than the flower of our youth, for of the one we have abundance, of the other little, and beyond price. If he will not accept, there will be war between our states." General Eticon, a bluff, bearded man, interjects, "And you must bring back all the information you can, in case the worst occurs." Yet in his bloodshot eyes you can see that this is a prospect he rather hopes for than fears. "Come," continues Aegeus, and walks over to a doorway leading out from the great hall. "I will draw up the documents. We can wait in the hall for Aegeus to complete his task, or pay attention to the fact that he told us to come with him, and follow in his footsteps." The doorway leads to a large but bare room. Beyond this is a tiny study closed off by silken hangings. Here your father draws up the edicts of his rule, or, more often, has scribes do it for him, but this is a private document. The king seats himself at the table and speaks once more. "Altheus," he says, "there are things I must say to you that I could not say before the nobles of the city and visitors from afar. Minos is an implacable man, and I fear he may not accept our offer of tribute. Were the Minotaur to be killed, however, he might see the wisdom of an alternative course, or even be too weak to attack. Too weakened to attack Athens again, for it is said that the presence of the beast in Crete gives divine strength to their armies. I will give the captain of the ship which bears you instructions to journey under a black sail. If you succeed, change them to white, and I will know that at your coming that you have succeeded. Be swift, for already discontent grows daily at the sacrifices, and my guards have dispatched 5 men to the care of black-hearted Hades. Yet before you go, there is one service more I must ask of you. The Amazons, women warriors, are marching to our city to besiege it. No one can divine the reason why, not even the seer Honus." Clearly the king has got a little bit of stomach gas from the feast and just lets out a little bilge there. "We need your aid to fight off this threat. With this, Aegeus starts to write the letters for the Cretan king. When he is finished, he seals them with hot wax and hands them to you. We will note letters for King Minos. Also, we got this back, so we don't need to mark it as removed anymore. We can thank Aegeus and depart for our bedchamber, or stay awake in case the attack comes, or, as we did last time, take the clue that there's something a hero might do in this situation. A whole army advancing on us? You decide that it would be wise to scout the Amazon camp, now close to the walls of Athens itself, for you may discover the reason for the attack. Silently you pass through the city and out of the gates, the guards saluting as you pass. You can soon see the campfires of the Amazons lighting up the midnight sky as the shepherd's burning cottage illuminates the tiny valley, driving off both sheep and the neighbours who have come to help, fearful now of the fate in store for them. There's a clue, but we're already on our way into the camp. I'm not sure there's much else we could pick up. Closer you creep, like the mountain lion that stalks her prey, craving meat for her hungry cubs crying out in the den. There are few guards. The Amazons seem too confident for such a precaution. You look into one tent. Fortunately, it is not occupied, and there is little of interest, only various jars, urns, and a shield of sewn hides. Before you can examine this more closely, you hear voices. Someone is about to enter the tent. "Queen Antiope's leopard skin!" the speaker begins, but then sees you and stops. She carries a... Oh, so that's not an expression of shock at seeing us. So, "Queen Antiope's leopard skin," the speaker begins, but then sees you and stops. She carries a spear and a sewn hide shield and wears a bearskin. We can attack her or try and escape out of the tent. We will strike at this tall, powerful Amazon, because why should we be a coward? It's not in our nature, allegedly. Except for when it is. But the Amazons are women of honour. The Amazon has might 7, 5 basic plus 2 for her spear, protection 14, 10 basic, 2 from her hide shield, 2 for the bearskin. Last time, we prayed to Athena to aid us in this fight, and the Amazon ran out of the tent. I think we followed her and got jumped by a load of her mates, and lost all our weapons and were sent back to the city. So we cannot afford to do that. Now, we only need to seriously wound her. We don't need to destroy her completely. However, the Amazon has might 7 and protection 14 and is healthy. We only need to land 2 blows. However, that protection of 14 means we need to roll 8s if using the long knife. And she needs 9s to strike us. I'm not overlooking the blessing of Asclepius. In fact, that's going to be kind of crucial because it will only exist for this fight. If we use the axe, we will have a might of 9, meaning we need roll only 5s to strike her instead of 8s. 3-point difference. And our protection will drop to 13, meaning she would need 6s to strike us instead of 9s. However, We have the favour of Asclepius, which means we get to ignore the first wound in our next fight, which is this one. So it will take 4 hits to kill us. And we need 2 hits on her. If we are struck 3 times, usually twice, then we go down to rolling 1 die to hit. And with 6, we would need to use honour to even be able to land a blow. However, we need 8s to hit. We can drop that down to 5s. So, whatever we need to roll 1, whatever we use, the knife or the axe, we need to roll 1 lower than her to land a hit. We need to land 2 hits in the time she could land 3. However, if we need 8s, we could roll kind of low, like a 6 or 7 or even a 5, and miss. And she could roll high and hit us. It would be a long, protracted standoff until we could land those blows. I'm going with the axe. Okay. To push us up to a 9 might. And down to a protection of 13. It's temporary, because if we can power through her defense quickly before she can land those 3 blows on us to cripple us and make us incapable of defeating her without spending honour, I would be reluctant to use the axe in this situation were it not for the favour of Asclepius granting us an extra point of health, essentially. So, 2 dice, plus 9. Altheus strikes first. And veritably wounds the Amazon. She is now wounded. She will roll her 2 dice plus 7, also scoring a 16. Altheus would be wounded, but the favour of Asclepius lets him ignore this minor wound. Now with the axe we strike again. 20! We must have rolled an 11. A 5 and a 6, or a 6 and a 5. That's a 2 in 36, a 1 in 18 chance. Because when working out the probability of a number with 2 6-sided dice, you do a 6x6 table, because it's not just I rolled a 5 and a 6. Because each of those 2 dice could have rolled the 5 or the 6, so it doubles the chance of it. Whereas, essentially, you've got twice the chance of rolling an 11 as you have of rolling a 12. Just like you've got twice the chance of rolling a 3 that you have of rolling a 2. The 2 dice gives you a kind of bell curve. Anyway, she is now seriously wounded. So be it. The Amazon drops her strangely shafted spear to the ground, unable to fight any longer. "Be merciful," she cries, "and Hera will smile on you. We could spare her, kill her, or take the clue. We came here for information." You threaten to kill her if she does not tell you the reason for the attack. She tugs at her long black hair for a moment, as if in thought, and then says, It is no secret. Aegeus's soldiers raided our land, and amongst the booty was a golden hairpin sacred to Hera. A small thing to you, but the symbol of our queen's power. On a whim, you pick up a small silver earring which has fallen to the floor. We will make a note of this. And honourably let her live, obviously. You may take the shield and spear and leave the camp of the warrior women. The Amazon, being an honourable opponent, does not raise the alarm. Have 5 honour points for your victory, which we shall absolutely do. Taking us up to 30. Makes up for the 3 we used earlier. So we now have a spear, a very iconic Greek weapon. It's interesting that might and protection are both listed for weapons and armour. I don't recall any a weapon that grants protection or armour that grants might in the trilogy of books. But there is that little thing you can get from the man who's being hounded by the Furies. So 4 plus 2 is 6. However, breastplate, helmet, greaves, yeah, no shield. Sure. So that takes our protection up to 18, which is getting towards the realms of invulnerability, to be honest. 10, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. Hang on a minute. Oh no, it's already in there. 1 for the Blessing of Athena. 2, 4, 6, 7, 18. That is correct. You quickly run away from the camp of the Amazons, fearful lest anyone should spot you and take you prisoner. You must warn Athens of the great hosts you have seen assembled so close, and tomorrow you must be ready to defend your father's city. Once in the town, you reach the white-walled palace quickly, passing through the flower-girt entrance, and explain everything to your father. We could stay awake in case the assault comes at night, or sleep so that we may be refreshed for the coming of the life-crushing war. Look, if the attack comes at night, there's enough guards and soldiers in the palace, or even servants, witnesses, that there would be an uproar and we would be awakened. It's highly unlikely someone would burst into our bedroom while we were asleep and we'd be vastly disadvantaged. It's possible that we might forget an item or two from our room on the way out to fight if we wake up in the middle of the night, but no. There's enough people here we feel fairly safe and secure, just as the Amazon Queen must have felt secure when we entered her camp. Although, not that all of her soldiers were just so secure. So we will absolutely get a good night's sleep. You lie awake for a time, considering the long journey that lies ahead of you. You have travelled far from Trozen and learnt much, yet your task is not half done, and you know it will be long before the words of the god Hermes cease to echo down the chambers of your life. At last, you sleep. In the morning you waken, just at the time when fresh dawn comes and with her crimson streamers lights up the pale sky. Today is clearly the day of the assault, A serving maid brings you in a hearty meal of meat and goat's milk. Once you have eaten, you go down to meet Aegeus. So, the descriptions in this book are very poetic, which gives the impression that Altheus himself might perceive the world this way, rather than this being the way the world is. And we know from Book 2 that possibly he speaks in his sleep. So it is entirely possible that he may awaken slowly if the attack had been launched at night. So knowing all these things, we may have chosen to remain awake. Anyway, once we have eaten, we go down to meet with Aegeus. He stands pensive, and in his arms he bears his own weapons and armour. This, he says, is all I have left. Much has been lost, and I am too old to use what remains. Go now and save our city from this dire peril, and may the gods be with you. With this he hands you a sword, might 3, a small shield, protection 2. Not dissimilar to the Amazon hide shield, but I think we'll take his, obviously. And a breastplate, protection 2. You may use these items in combat if they are better than the arms you already possess. Well, the breastplate is not better, the shield is not better, but I'll use the new ones. And we have a sword. Now, I'm keeping all of these extra weapons noted because I believe there was an instance towards the end of Book 1 or in Book 2 where we were told to, like, abandon weapons. Like, can you leave 2 weapons here or something? I'm just seeing on the opposite page a shield with a might modifier because it's apparently massive or something. Anyway, we're not there. We don't know. It's on the way to Eleusis, sacred to Demeter. How did we miss this? Oh well. That could have been quite nice, but the might reduction is... that could have been quite dangerous. Also, because we made it through that fight, I should now remove the note about the favour of Asclepius, allowing me to ignore a wound. I am still in his good books, but the boon has passed. If you have been told the reason for the Amazon attack on Athens, we absolutely have. If you have a small silver earring, turn to section 108. Otherwise, take 1 to 6 shame points, roll a die, and turn to the section you would have turned to if you'd gone straight out to the battle. This section appears to be here to catch cheaters. Right? Because you only get the silver earring if you have the information. It's part of the same section, and it's not a you can take this if you want. It's you take this because you'll need it later on to prove that you have been here. However, this would only catch most cheaters once. They'd go, oh bugger, I've been caught. Okay, fine. Do the honourable thing. And go, where the hell would I have got this? And they'd go looking for a bit, and if they didn't find it, they'd just cheat and say they had it the second time they got here. But we do have it. And also, it's practically on the same page, 108 and 102, very close together. Father, you cry, realizing with a start that this is the first time you have addressed Aegeus thus. There is a way the dark pain of death can be avoided this day, and the horse-haired helmets of the warriors of Athens can be worn proudly, yet those warriors live. For the cause of the enmity between you and the Amazons is a golden hairpin. It is sacred to Hera. To give it up is no great dishonour, and hate's dread wrath could be turned aside. No good can come of keeping it. Aegeus thanks you, his son, heartily, for he is war-wearied and has no stomach for the fight with the Amazons. Quickly he scurries off to the treasury and soon returns with the hairpin. Go quickly now, he says, and return this to Antiope, so there may be peace. There is also a clue here. We can enter the camp fully armed, or go without any weapons as a token of peace, or pay attention to the clue, which might let us know which of those would be the better option. Taking the sacred hairpin in your hands, you set off for the Amazon camp. Swiftly you realise that to go unannounced would be to suffer the fate of a man who walks into the den of the lion which cannot hunt, for there it has a thorn in its paw. He is devoured by the very beast he would have saved. You hold the great pin out in front of you. It is large, almost the size of a sword. Oh, that's really big. Bearing in mind that the Greek swords were typically a not dissimilar size to the Roman gladius. And I do mean the Roman gladius, not the spafer or the pafer. The spafer is like a cavalry sword. It's basically like a gladius the length of a Viking longsword, almost. And balanced for horseback. The pafer is... I can't remember exactly what that's like. So the Greek sword, you've got the typical Greek sword that most of you know, the sort of leaf-shaped blade, similar size to a gladius. And then you've got the kopis, which is basically the axe of swords. You may be familiar with the kopis, but you may not realise it. For starters, a lot of people, a lot of Pathfinder players in the last 5 or 10 years got obsessed with the falcata. The falcata is a variant on the kopis. The kopis looks like a giant Bowie knife. Kind of. No, not a Bowie knife. The kukri that the Gurkhas use, like a giant Gurkha knife. The blade of the Gurkha's kukri is remarkably similar to a much smaller version of the sword of the Greeks. Hang on one moment. Okay, here we go. So, the kopis is a chopping sword, weighted heavily near the end, with a forward curve to it, sometimes more extreme, lopping forward. It's very much like chopping with an axe or machete. And yeah, similar again in length, not dissimilar to a gladius, although possibly a bit longer. And you can see, with the kopis, the bend is quite near the hilt. With the falcata, it's further down. And we have an example here. The falcata has a more exaggerated bend on the back of the spine. The kopis can be straighter. Now, the kopis often is almost as extreme as the falcata, but essentially it's more forward, more of a forward chopping, like a cleaver. So like more of a corner to it, the falcata. And yeah, Pathfinder players love falcatas for a while. And the famous Gurkha kukri knife, remarkably similar in shape and function, in that it's a great big chopping knife that will really mess you up if it cuts you to bits, you know. So yeah, there we got some pictures of ancient weaponry. Awesome. Where were we? Oh yes. Swiftly you realise that to go unannounced would be to suffer the fate of a man who walks into the den of the lion which cannot hunt, for it has a thorn in its paw. He is devoured by the very beast he would have saved. You hold the great hairpin out in front of you. It is large, almost the size of a sword. The queen must have fantastically thick hair. Those Amazons who see you dare not slay you, for to do so would be to desecrate their land's most sacred relic. Instead, they guide your way to the tent of the queen. man-slaying spears barring your way elsewhere. The Queen of the Amazons sits cross-legged on the dusty floor, her leopard skin fastened at the shoulder with a golden brooch. Here, you say, is what you seek? Go now from the Athenian shores, and while all-seeing Zeus scans the earth with a mortal eye, let not your great-oared ships make landing on our beaches. Antiope accepts the object from your hands, cradles it in her arms for a moment, and then directs her gaze at you. Let the Athenians also beware, for if they come again to the Amazonian shores, we will be prepared, and the young men of Attica will perish on a foreign shore as a flower shrivels up in the burning heat of the summer, and the garden is bare. Yet in return for your heroic generosity I will aid you a little. I know you travel to Crete. There seek out an Amazon named Lembra, and say you are Antiope's friend. With this, she unpins the brooch from her shoulder and hands it to you, so Lembra can recognize you. You do not stay, but go quickly back to Aegeus to tell him that there is peace between the two nations. Have 5 honor points for preventing the war. That seems to be the exact same amount we got for defeating a single Amazon in single combat. Is it described? No, but there's a description of it elsewhere for defeating her on the battlefield. Not this one. Yeah, Antiope's jeweled brooch is proof for Lembra. Isn't it lucky we keep... We'll obviously give the gold... We've given the golden hairpin as large as a sword. Probably not a real hairpin. Possibly more for placing on a statue in their temple or at the feet of a statue. Obviously, this is not the same. Now, this is actually interesting. We have not defeated Antiope. We're restored. A golden hairpin to Queen Antiope of the Amazons. Sorry, yeah, we'll go full on. Yeah. Ooh. And you know what? With that glorious achievement, I think it would be a good time to end the episode. Back to the house of your father you go, pride in your heart. In the great hall the nobles of Athens are once again gathered. You explain the success of your mission and they cheer, applauding you, just as if you became a conquering hero, having laid low Athens' enemies and left their corpses to the dogs. Is it not grand that we did not have to do such a thing? Oh. What? 4:41. Okay, you are tired after the exertions of the day, and your youthful limbs can hardly bear you further. You stagger and fall to the ground. A man comes to you and puts a goblet to your lips, and you sip at the cool, dark wine. You are carried by servants of Aegeus to your room, and there you rest for some hours, sleeping intermittently. We have been told the queen makes her own wine, and it is potent. While the feast and the celebrations go on below, at last you are recovered, and feel able to act again, fully refreshed. We can stay the night, ready to leave next morning, or decide that we can delay no longer, and go down at once without saying farewell. down to the Piraeus, port of Athens, where a ship awaits us carrying the human tribute for Minos, and get into a tangle with the Furies, rather, not Harpies, which is probably not a good thing. There's a clue here. I can't remember if it's a good or a bad one. And I did say it was a good time to end the episode. I'm glad we got to go back to the palace and report to the king our success and the nobles approved. But this probably is where we should stop. So without further ado, I'll bid you all a fond farewell. I hope you've all enjoyed this episode, and look, we only needed 3 dice rolls. And I'll see you all in the very next one, although, mind you, we could have probably handled things slightly better in the court if we had been arrested, been taken before the king, refused the queen's wine, somehow, without the benefit of Dionysus warning us and protecting us from the wine being poisoned. Because that way we would not have gained 3 more points of shame. Oh well, we did alright, I think. So I'll see you all next time. Bye for now, everyone.